Okay, hello, good afternoon all. So,
Afternoon,
as
Shabiren.
people are, hello sir, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
So, we will just allow a couple of minutes more so that people are joining. Yeah, good afternoon, Pranay.
Good afternoon, Viren.
Good afternoon, good afternoon. So as most of the people know, like this is the our second session on this particular topic. And the trainer, actually the trainer is in hospital for some of his surgery, but he is now fit and he will be joining in another 5 minutes. So he was on some his work in Middle East and he has to undergo some surgery suddenly. But he is active now and he will be joining this session in just 5 minutes. Okay, so I think Michael, you are here. Can you able to hear us?
I can hear you perfectly. Thank you.
Okay, great. So good afternoon, everyone. And just to have the introduction, my name is Virendra, and I'm one of the director in RSJ. And we are holding a couple of webinars on the subject of assurance of the sustainability reporting. And we have our expert in this area, Mr. Michael Ray. He is basically from Canada, and he is actively working in this area from South Africa currently. And before I introduce Michael, I just want to thank Michael and again everybody to know that Michael was on his official visit in Middle East and he has to undergo surgery. He's in hospital and I mean, thanks. Like he is still available here to conduct the webinar as we have promised to everyone. So first of all, thank you, Michael, for having this.
Yeah, you're very welcome.
Yeah, thank you. So just to introduce Michael once again, as I mentioned, like he is the basically from Canada and working in the area of sustainability in currently operating from South Africa. He has a rich experience in this area for almost more than 25 years now, and he has completed the assurance of the sustainability reporting of more than 120 companies across the globe. And apart from that, he is also actively supporting many of the companies for designing their the sustainability reports or integrity reports or the work in the area of ESG. And he is also a trainer for the certified sustainability practitioner from accountability. And I will hand over to Michael because he is the one today who would be speaking and we would be happy to hear him more. So Michael, up to you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And so I'm just going to check you can hear me perfectly, okay?
Yes, all perfect.
Good. Yeah, so I guess I should introduce myself by saying that, yes, I'm in a hospital in Qatar. But that if anybody ever wants to choose a flight and Qatar Airways is one of your choices, go for it. Because I swear, if it wasn't for the Qatar Airways, I wouldn't. I'm fairly certain I'd be well on my way to death right now, because they wouldn't let me onto a plane on Tuesday night because I looked ill. So they pulled me out of the boarding and sent me to the medical clinic. The medical clinic sent me to the hospital, and like hours later, I had emergency surgery for a kidney infection. And I just never in a million years did I assume that after traveling the world for as long as I have, that this would ever happen. But I'm 100% fine. I'm not suffering and having this conversation with you. Everything's good. So thank you for attending. And as Virendra said, I'm very committed to this work. I'm very committed to the work that RSJ is doing in promoting and encouraging effective sustainability assurance, and particularly accredited sustainability assurance. Because there's only a couple of options that people get right now. There's the historical engagements standard for ISAE 3000, which is essentially an accounting firm's standard, and it's the accountability standard, or so the financial standard for accountants is verification or assurance over non-financial information. So it's essentially auditing of the environmental data, the social data, the anything that isn't on a balance sheet. Now this is being updated with ISSA 5000, which is a product of the CSRD, and it too is from the IAASB and IFRS. And what they're saying now is that there are certain standards or certain information that accountants must be checking from a sustainability perspective, not only just that it's there, but that it's correct. And so in particular, you have the IFRS S1 and IFRS S2 data, where both of these things are financial. So they are the cost implications, the money spent, the money allocated to, the projected cost of any impact that a company will have, or anything that will have an impact on the company's future viability or quote unquote sustainability. Whereas IFRS S2 is even more specific, and it says whatever money you have spent, allocated, or expect to potentially risk from climate change. And I'm sure we're all experiencing the issues of climate change, things like the increased frequency and intensity of extreme weather patterns or extreme weather events, things like flooding and drought, et cetera, et cetera. But also the expectation is that companies would include within that data their carbon data. So not the actual carbon data itself, although that fits in IFRS S1, it's the cost of managing your carbon data. Since 2009, accountability has a standard, the AA1000 Assurance Standard. And that assurance standard has been saying you must provide truly comparable data for all of your non-financial risks and opportunities. And so I'll get to how this began in a second, But I first just want to ask a question of the group. And the question is this. Who do you think wants assurance? Who do you think is asking for assurance to become mandatory? And if you say governments, they'll say yes, but not really, because the governments are responding to their own stakeholders' issues.
It could be the investors.
So investors. So you think that the investors are the ones who most benefit from? Okay. Anybody else? Oh, sorry. Pranay, let me go back. Why do you say investors?
Yeah, because once a neutral third party is assuring and mandating that these companies, what you call processes and systems, are compliant to some globally accepted norms for sustainability. So that inspires confidence in the investor that this company is here for a social cause way beyond its own profitability. It is looking into the sustainability of the future generations also. So that's how it inspires confidence and trust, builds trust in the organization with the investor community. And if I want to put money into a company, I would think that, whether this is for a larger good, whether the organization is for a larger good, and it has a vision for the future. That is what I'm interested as an investor.
So two things there. You're absolutely right. Number one, it's for their own risk management.
Yes.
Right. So
Yes.
they're investing money. They need to manage their risk in that money. They need to make sure, essentially, that the companies are meeting all reasonable legal and regulatory compliance. But I will tell you that it's not all investors are actually wanting to invest in a company that is doing the right thing. But that doesn't mean that all investors shouldn't be seeing this as valuable, because sorry, let me just because inherent in the investment is always going to be an issue of sustainability, regardless of whether you're targeting it or not. Because even if you're not interested in whether a company does a good job cleaning up after itself as a mining company, it'll still benefit the company to be effectively managing their sustainability. Now, just give you an example. I was at a mining company last year, a diamond mining company with a great big hole in the ground. And as I was standing at the top of this hole looking down, I said to the GM of the mine, I said, what is your plan at the end of the mine to fill the hole back up so it looks like exactly what it looked like when you first started digging? And he said, well, we have no plan. We don't need to have a plan. Like, if we were to have a plan for filling the hole, then the cost of diamonds would be way too high. To which I thought was ridiculous, because the price of diamonds is set by marketing, not necessarily by real intrinsic value. And particularly because in 2009, I was in France at a mining company called Areva Mining. It's a French mining company, and they are full life cycle. You explore, find, mine, process, and use uranium for the production of electricity that they then go ahead and distribute to end users. And I was at one of their old mines that had been closed. And if you went to that town, you would see what I saw, which was the inability to find a mine. When you went to the mine site, what you're actually looking at was a rehabilitated site that had been converted into a wetlands protection area and a new housing and commercial development section. So they had spent the money to close the mine properly. And what does that mean for Areva? it means that the price of their shares goes up. And so the investor is benefiting from a company that's actually doing the right thing, regardless of whether they're asking for it or not. So you're 100% correct. Investors are an important, but I would not say the most important stakeholder that benefits from assurance, effective assurance. Anybody else want to suggest a stakeholder?
Employees,
Sorry, go ahead.
the employees are also
The
important.
employees. So absolutely. And why would you say that?
Because after all, they will be getting benefit from this if the environment is getting better, because this will help them in overall development.
So ultimately, by properly managing your sustainability, what you're doing is managing the sustainability of your employees' jobs.
Yes.
And to give you an example of that, in 1997 to 2011, I helped a small little garment manufacturing company called Impashla Clothing in Cape Town. It was a Zimbabwean farmer who had moved to Cape Town after being kicked out. A white Zimbabwean farmer had been kicked out of Zimbabwe, and had all of his land, quote unquote, repossessed, others would say stolen. And he managed to take enough money so he could buy a little t-shirt manufacturing company with 67 employees. He built it up to roughly 120 employees before I got to their factory. And when I got to their factory and started writing their sustainability reports, I noticed a number of things that could be fixed. One of which was their energy consumption and carbon emissions. And because the owner of the company was a farmer and particularly interested in the natural physical environment, when we had done the calculations to determine what it would take to actually carbon neutralize, he was fully committed to it. And so we worked with an organization called Food and Trees for Africa to plant trees at particularly impoverished schools around the Cape Town area. We planted fruit trees, so citrus trees, orange, lemon, but also mango and avocado. Planting those trees didn't just offset the carbon, but gave food to the kids. This is a policy that I've been using ever since I started my business. And to think that that was the end product, that was, okay, a good feeling that we're going ahead and we're offsetting our carbon, wasn't actually the end. Because when the government found out about this, they went ahead and invested money to help them reduce their carbon emissions. So you may already know that there's a difference between carbon neutrality and net zero. Carbon neutrality means you emit as much carbon as you have to, and then you offset your carbon by doing whatever, planting trees or starting other projects, whatever. Whereas net zero means first you reduce your carbon and then you offset the carbon. And so what they did is the government paid for solar panels to go up on their factory to massively decrease their carbon or their energy consumption and improve their carbon efficiency. As a result of that, their main customer at the time was Puma, the German-based global sports apparel brand. And Puma issued them a contract to become a strategic WorldCat supplier, which meant that Impashla Clothing had a guarantee of 5 years of 100% full production capacity. The company increased to over 400 employees before I stopped working with them in 2001. And every one of those over 400 employees had a guarantee of a minimum of 2 years of employment, because the contract stated, we give you this 5-year contract with a minimum 2-year out clause. So the worst case scenario was these jobs were protected for a minimum of 2 years, which in South Africa was a huge deal because the garment manufacturing industry in South Africa was unable to compete with the likes of India, Bangladesh, Indonesia, Sri Lanka, etc. And so in this industry that was falling apart, suddenly you had over 400 employees that were guaranteed a minimum of 2 years employment and an expected 5 years of employment with the potential for further contracts. So remember, this was when they became the Puma's WorldCat strategic supplier, that was 2009. Imposter Clothing in 2025 is still a WorldCat strategic supplier. So every one of those employees has been employed for 16 years. So to get to that point, the employees had to make certain or had to participate to a certain level in managing their sustainability. So minimizing excessive water use, minimizing excessive waste, minimize excessive energy use, whatever. And so, yes, you're right. The employees definitely benefited. But
and in fact, sorry. And
I was just going to say, so go ahead.
A company which is more sustainable, which is working for social responsibility and all, the employees are also get attracted to those companies. In fact,
Yes. So
that is one.
The better type of worker gets attracted to those companies.
Yeah.
The ones who take their jobs much more seriously.
Yeah.
But of course, it goes back to Pranay's comment where he was saying investors, because at the time, the investors were 3 people. The main shareholder was a Zimbabwean farmer who ultimately sold his business and made a massive profit on his investment. Oddly enough, this Zimbabwean farmer, Cape Town t-shirt manufacturer, is now the head of sustainability at Mazars in the United Kingdom, so based in London. And he was hired almost exclusively on the back of the fact that he's someone who actually walked the entire journey and could demonstrate through personal experience that he was actually knowledgeable about the business case for sustainability. So we got investors and we've got employees, but I still disagree.
I would say the customers or the consumers, they are also,
Absolutely. The customers
because
also, yep.
because
So go ahead, sorry.
they are now asking for sustainable products, and they are ready to pay more. Even in fact, they are ready to pay more for the
They're
sustainable products.
They're willing to pay a premium. So let me give you this example. I'm currently in the process of producing the very first sustainability report for a coffee grower in Uganda. Now, it just so happened that I worked with this doctor back in 1992 doing demographic AIDS research in a very small Christian mission hospital in rural Uganda. And this man has gone through many seasons of his life, many seasons of his career, and at 64 years old decided to buy a coffee farm, or he bought a farm to turn it into a coffee farm to create sustainable employment in a deep rural area. This coffee farm has been operational now for 9 years, is only now turning a very minor profit. And one of the problems they've been facing is they're not generating enough revenue. When I went to go visit this old friend of mine, I stopped at 2 different places before I went to his farm. In Uganda, there are multiple places where you cross the equator. So the first time I crossed the equator, they were selling all sorts of, tourist merchandise, and the most prominent one was coffee. And on the bag of the coffee was a picture of the monument stating that this was purchased at the equator. And people were paying 40,000 shillings. So don't worry about the exchange rate, just think 40. They're paying 40,000 shillings for a half kilo of coffee. I bought a couple of bags for friends of mine who are big coffee lovers. I don't drink coffee, but they do. And then my friend and I, we went to see the gorillas in the southwest corner of Uganda, Bwindi National, or what's called the Bwindi Impenetrable Forest. And when we were there, we saw that some of the tourist merchandise, again, was coffee. And on the bags of this coffee were a picture of a gorilla and a little call out that said $1.50 US per kilogram of coffee sold goes to supporting the habitat protection of the gorillas. Because in that area, the farmers kept cutting down the forest in order to grow more and more coffee, basically because you couldn't make enough money to live on the amount that they were able to sell it for. Just the way the market works in Uganda, with these merchants that come along and buy for very, very cheap. In fact, what happens is the merchants give loans so you can grow coffee, but then they hold you to be able to buy the coffee for a very minimal price. And so what happened was a co-op was developed to ensure a better price for the coffee, so that the farmers could actually have a viable farm with less space. There, you paid 75,000 Ugandan shillings for the same 500 grams of coffee, so half a kilo. I then went to Dr. Ian Clark's farm, Northwest, and he was selling his coffee for 20,000 Ugandan shillings. So 40, 75, 20. And that was immediately, so someone who's been doing this work for 26 years, I took one look at his farm and could see that his farm is carbon neutral. The amount of carbon that's sequestered on that land, even with the principle of additionality, fully offsets the amount of carbon that they're emitting as a result of their energy consumption. And so only focusing on scope 1 and scope 2 emissions, which is fine globally, we're able to prove that this company is carbon neutral. So I said to Ian, let me produce a sustainability report for you. My colleague, a chemical process engineer who does the ISO 14064-065 verification, she'll verify the carbon for you, the carbon footprint and the neutrality, and we'll then put that certificate in your sustainability report so that your customers can actually see this. Not even 2 weeks later, Dr. Ian called me and he said, I was just at a coffee expo in Tanzania. And on day one, I met up with one of my customers who buys coffee for the market in Portugal. And one of the first questions out of his mouth was, what are you doing about sustainability? And Ian said, funny you should ask, because Michael was just here. Michael did the math. Michael's writing a report. And by September, we'll be able to release this report, which confirms that our coffee is carbon neutral. And the buyer said, as soon as you're able to prove that, I will pay you 50% more for all of the coffee that I buy. because my customers in Portugal are willing to pay a premium. Now, I know, as the buyer does, that the premium they'd be willing to pay is worth a lot more than the 50% on top of what Ian was charging. But still, Ian benefits. The customer benefits, the end consumer benefits, and the employees benefit. Because what Ian intends to do with this additional revenue is to support additional projects in the community to enhance the sustainability footprint of that area within Uganda. In addition, through my chemical process engineer, who has done carbon credit verification, we are going to establish a carbon credit project, and all of the proceeds of that shouldn't say all, a minimum of 50% of all of the proceeds for that for the carbon credits will go to education programs in this deep rural area, where the quality of education is wildly insufficient for the needs of the area. And so even the community benefits from the sustainability. So the community benefits from the assurance, the customer benefits from the assurance, the end user benefits from the insurance, and the investor benefits from the assurance. Because right off the bat, this will turn Clark Coffee into a much more profitable organization, finally generating return on investment for Ian and his partner, his investment partner. And so we're capturing more and more stakeholders benefiting from the assurance. Anybody else you think might be a beneficiary of effective assurance?
Even this is helping our own self-development is also happening, because at one point of time we were not knowing and so many wastages were happening. So now so many resource depletion was going on. So now after learning and having knowledge on sustainability, we are now optimizing our resources also. Like if we are working in a manufacturing industry, so now we are optimizing our resources, how to reduce wastages. All this is a part of this journey.
Yeah. So this is the thing. In my world, the number one benefactor of sustainability assurance, effective sustainability assurance, is the company itself. Because number one, if through assurance you're able to prove that there are efficiencies that are possible that you haven't already identified, then that is money. Like that is profit. So it helps improve the overall sustainability of the company itself. And to give you an example of that, one of my previous assurance clients is a casino company. At the time, they had 12 casinos, most of them in South Africa, one of them in Zimbabwe. And literally my very first weekend in South Africa was my 30th birthday. And I went to a place called Sun City for my 30th birthday. And I'm very nosy. I'm inquisitive. And I was looking around, I was seeing different things. I asked for a meeting with the general manager to try and figure out how they were able to take this place, which was in a very arid land, and create 2 golf courses, a water theme park, a mini lake with water skiing, etc., etc. And the first thing that I figured out was that when this was established by a man called Saul Kersner, he did it because he wanted to create sustainable employment in a rural area that also met his own needs of making money at a time when apartheid banned gambling. So this area where he built it is in what was called one of the homelands. Bantustan. And the Bantustans were not in great areas for things like water, vegetation. You couldn't be going and starting a big farm there. The only thing that really worked in these places was like mines. And so he gets this thing going, and the whole business was structured around benefiting the local community. So they had a policy right from day one that as long as the skill was available in the local community, all jobs would go first to the local community. Now, I was impressed by this. And oddly enough, years later, Sun International became one of my early clients. And on my very first site visit, I learned that what I thought was a hotel chain with casinos was actually a casino chain with hotels, because over 80% of the revenue was generated by fewer than 1,000 guests at their hotels, what they refer to as the whales, the big time gamblers that are willing to drop $10 million in a weekend. And so the hotels were there to entertain the kids, entertain the wives, basically keep them happy while the gambler is off doing his thing. But it led to a site visit at one of their casinos in Cape Town. And at this place, one of the entertainment facilities was an ice rink. So if any of you have ever been to an ice rink, you'll know that as soon as you go into an ice rink, it's very cold, which makes sense because you're skating on ice. And you can imagine that keeping this place so cold to keep the ice frozen is going to cost you a lot of electricity. When I went to go, when I was doing the review of the electricity consumption, this place has a lot of what they call concessionaires. There's an amusement park, like an arcade for the kids. There's restaurants. There's like a KFC and a McDonald's and a pizza place and whatever. And these concessionaires, they rented the space and paid for their own electricity. So in the electrical engineering department, they had a series of meters. And these meters could tell them how much money the company had to charge their concessionaires. One of the meters was for KFC, and one of the meters was for the ice rink. And for whatever reason, the KFC was using over 30 times more electricity than the ice rink. And this was a KFC kiosk, not a full-on restaurant even. And so you think of the electricity that they would use. A lot of their cooking was done through gas, but they still had fridges and freezers and stuff like that. But there's no way that a small little KFC would use more electricity than the ice rink. And so when I queried this with the, I kid you not, electrical engineer, that was the sign that sat on his desk that you looked at when you were talking to the guy. When I questioned this with the electrical engineer, he said, yeah, but ice rinks don't need a lot of electricity because your challenge is to get the ice. And then all you have to do is keep the ice frozen. And so what you do is you close up the windows and everything to make sure that no heat comes in. So you walk through these big, heavy plastic folds at the door to try and keep as much heat out as possible. And I was like, I'm sorry, but you're speaking to a Canadian here. And I grew up on ice rinks. And I know how much snow gets generated as you're scraping the ice to keep it clean. I know how much energy goes into one of these things. Your data is definitely incorrect. When I checked to see what the problem was, it was purely how they were reading the meter. Because there was the numbers, say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and under that was a times 10. And so they were reading it as the difference from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 9, and saying, okay, well, we use 2 kilowatt hours. But those 2 kilowatt hours were actually supposed to be 20. I traced this back 7 years and found that they'd been doing it all 7 years. I was able to get the financial records for 5 years, and I traced back within those 5 years, they had undercharged this one concessionaire over $1 million. And so suddenly, the company found $1 million they didn't know they were missing. And that's the most extreme case, but not the only case. I have found overbilling by municipalities at mines. So they're getting charged for too much electricity or too much water, water being the most common one. I have found things like overpayment of contractors for person hours worked because people were estimating instead of calculating. And this is what an assurance provider is meant to actually do. You're not there to verify a number. You're not there to audit a number. Because when you verify or audit the number, what you're doing is checking to make sure the number is correct. Some auditors, some verifiers go beyond that, but the majority do not. They simply say, tell me what number you're going to report to your stakeholders, and then give me all of the data that you used to get to that number. And if the number that you're reporting equals the sum of all of the data that led to the number, then I'm satisfied and I will confirm your statement. That's not what assurance is. Assurance is accuracy, consistency, completeness, and reliability. The number can be accurate, but can be completely wrong. In the case of this ice rink situation, the number was accurate, but based on the readings that were taken, it was the readings that were wrong. And so that's where this massive error happened. And we find this with injuries on duty, because if you're only checking for accuracy, you're saying, what is your lost time injury frequency rate? Which is how many injuries on duty resulted in at least one person day lost, or one potential person day lost. So even if the person isn't expected to return to work the next day, if they're unable to return to their normal duties the day after the injury, then it's a lost time injury. And companies get this definition wildly incorrect if they don't have proper definitions. I had a client earlier this year, an OEM, an original equipment manufacturer, literally a motor company, a Japanese-owned brand. And they were reporting that they had a lost time injury of injury frequency rate of 1.71, which is still incredibly high, because compared to South Africa's only true oil and gas company with an LTIFR of 0.10, this automotive manufacturer was 17 times more dangerous than Sasol, which makes no sense if you think that an oil and gas company is likely to be much more dangerous than an automotive manufacturing plant. I mean, you literally have the potential for explosions. But when I looked at the data, their lost time injury frequency rate was actually 12.54, 125 times more dangerous than Sasol. And it was because the company itself has 3 operations. 2 of them are managed directly by the automotive manufacturer itself, and one of them is a wholly owned subsidiary, but managed by the local team. It has a small, it has like 300 employees compared to a total of like 13,000. But there, they had 27 injuries, lost time injuries, compared to 4 within the rest of the company. And so when they were reporting to their own head office in Japan, they were lying to them. Brutal. A similar thing happened to another one of my clients a few years ago, where one of their sites had a lost time injury frequency rate of over 7 compared to the group average of about 0.1, or sorry, 1.0. And if, so their biggest customer was Toyota. And if Toyota had found out that their lost time injury frequency rate was as high as it was, they would have potentially lost all contracts. The holding company, Metair, had 12 businesses, each one providing parts to the automotive sector, all 12 of them providing automotive parts to Toyota. Batteries, springs, wiring harnesses, the wire to make the wiring harnesses, lights, panels, etc. And this was in their battery manufacturing company. And if the battery manufacturing company were to lose its contracts, the potential is that it wouldn't be limited to that company, but to Metair Global. What Metair learned was that they needed to fix this problem immediately. We had already calculated an estimated budget to fix all of the problems that were leading to the high safety incidents. It was 50 million rand, which works out to, about $2.5 million. They allocated that within 2 weeks. They got all of the repairs done within 8 months. When I revisited this company 2 years later, their lost time injury frequency rate was 0.00, and it had been 0.00 for more than a year. Risk annihilated. They no longer had to worry about Toyota finding out about this excessively high injury frequency rate, and they could just rest assured that there was no risk of them ever losing even a contract with that company, the battery manufacturer. And so this is all just to say to you that with an appropriate assurance, a standard like accountability, where even though it doesn't tell you that you should be looking for accuracy, consistency, completeness, and reliability, it is telling you that you have to look deeper than just verifying a number. Your job isn't just to look at a number, look for the evidence, tick the box that says, yes, the sum of the parts equals the whole. You have to dig deeper. And so what I have determined over my 26 years is that must include accuracy, consistency, i.e., are you using the same definitions as everybody else? Completeness, are you including everybody and or excluding everybody? So for example, the full scope of the impact on electricity consumption of the ice rink. Accuracy, consistency, completeness, and reliability. Do you actually have the policies, procedures, systems, and controls in place to guarantee that the number is as accurate as possible? So accuracy cannot be a function of dumb luck. it has to be a function of scientific methodology. You have to be able to prove to the company, no least, that you have done enough homework, you've done enough digging, asked enough questions, calculated enough information to come to a conclusion that says, yes, we believe the information is fair and factual. And so, like, you know, I am committed. I hope Virendra's already explained this to you, but I am committed to working with RSJ because RSJ is committed to trying to help future assurance providers in India to understand what's behind the assurance standards, why you want to be using either directly or indirectly the AA1000 AS, and what that means in reality in terms of actually how you do it. And so we've started this partnership, and I'm very excited about it, where I'm going to be working for RSJ to become their lead instructor for the next 2 years to provide the CSAP training program in India. And so I believe the first one starts, what, 21st of July? Is that correct, Virendra?
Yeah, it is 22nd, 23rd, and 24th.
22nd, 23rd, and 24th of July. And then the next one is the following week?
Okay, so just a moment. I think
Okay, yeah.
okay, so
yeah,
the
call it
correct correct date is 23, 24, and 25 July for Delhi,
for Delhi, yeah,
and 29, 30, and 31st July for Mumbai.
for Mumbai.
Yeah.
And then our intention is to expand this to the other 2 cities in which you operate. What are those?
Currently, it is in Delhi and Mumbai. For upcoming, we can explore for Bangalore as well.
For which cities? Bangalore and?
Currently, Bangalore, and then we can think of a few more to add, like maybe the Ahmedabad and Hyderabad.
Okay, yeah, perfect. Yeah. So this is exciting for me because, you know, I'm not saying I'm coming to the end of my career, but I'm coming to the beginning of my next phase of my career, where I really want to take the 26 years of experience that I've developed and try and transfer as much of that as possible to the next generation of assurance providers. Now, in today's world, next generation could mean 50 and above. like the fact that we're all working far later in our lives than our parents and grandparents ever used to, and the fact that this work is more brain work than physical work means that we're still productive well into our 70s and, I say early 80s, but you're an exception if you're in your early 80s. But I totally expect to be working for another 20 years. And I believe that the best assurance providers that I can ever help develop are the ones with industry experience. And when I say industry experience, I mean anybody who's already been an auditor or a verification specialist, because those people will already have on the ground, boots on the ground experience in factories and mines and farms and all of the industries where you automatically assume that that's where assurance should happen. Because those are the people who will be able to quickly pick up when there's a possibility of an error. And the job of an assurance provider isn't only just to do the calculation, but it's to be able to interrogate the process to determine if everything's actually as good as it should be. And so I'm excited, as I say, for the next 2 years, we've got a joint commitment for me to come along and be the lead training partner for RSJ, ultimately training their own lead trainer, and for me getting the experience of working with Indians. 2 of my very best friends, my very best friend Tommy is Indian, comes from Kerala. So at some point in time, I'm going to drag my butt down to Kerala just to see where Tommy's from. But but I'm very pleased to have had this opportunity to speak to you guys now. I'm not sure how many people we have dialed in on this meeting, but it's quite a few. I see there's 4 screens of folks here. So if I just go, it looks like there's 33 people on this call, so that's great. And I just want to say, I know that we're running short of time, but does anybody have any questions? Anybody. Can be about anything. Even if it's something that I missed and you think that I missed discussing in this session.
What is the difference between BRSR and EcoVadis?
Okay, so those are their own verification systems, if I'm not incorrect. And those are very different from an assurance standard. So those are getting a certificate for meeting certain requirements that have been set by those organizations. And those are big businesses. Those are consultancy firms that have this product and they give their own little stamp of approval. Fair to say, Virendra?
Yeah, so ECOD is basically they provide the ratings based on the documentary evidence what the companies are providing, and it is it can be obtained by the manufacturing industries. However, BRSR is specifically for the listed companies, the top 1,000 listed companies in stock exchange in India. And for whatever the sustainability report they are producing or disclosing, it is been made mandatory. So that is the BRSR. So BRSR doesn't give any rating. And as per the recent guidelines of the SEBI, out of 1,000, top 250 were to have the assurance done on their BRSR reporting. So BRSR basically the disclosure of their ESG performance and the assurance done by the neutral party. EcoVadis is basically providing the rating as per the prescribed standard, which has been suggested particularly by the customers. So one is the regulatory requirement, one is driven by the customers.
And so there's many like that. There's like Bon Sucrose, which is for the sugar industry. There's the what is it, the dolphin-free tuna labeling that's done for fishing. There's various of these, and they're all consultancies that are set up, and this is their line of business. So accountability does have its own consulting arm, but they do not do assurance. The standards of accountability are set up as a separate entity so as to create no sense of unfair trading practice. So they themselves can't go out and do assurance because then they would be cheating their own assurance providers. So it's an independent standard that's been based on multi-stakeholder platforms that have been revised a couple of times. We're currently going through the stakeholder engagement standard. And these are really to try and meet global expectations for effective reporting. So it's not a reporting standard. It's an assurance standard.
So Michael, globally, what are the other standards, assurance standards like accountability, like AA? Are there other organizations which also have devised some kind of globally accepted assurance frameworks or something?
So ISAE 3000, which is IFAC, that's the accounting one. So for the longest time, it's just been ISAE 3000 and IRAS since 2009. I think ISAE 3000 only came in, I believe, 2012 or 2015. It was inferred prior to that, but it only came out as a separate document, I think 2012 or 2015. Accountabilities came out in 2009. The ISSA 5000 is actually a follow-on to the ISAE 3000. And what they're doing is trying to protect the accountancy firms. So they're trying to create the perception that only accounting firms can do assurance. And what stakeholders will tell you is that ISAE 3000 and by extension ISSA 5000, totally inadequate. You only need to look at the conclusion statement to realize how disappointed the user of a report would be if they're taking it seriously. Because you are mandated to give a statement such as, nothing has come to our attention to lead us to believe that the information is not incorrect. And I can give that statement to this hospital that I'm sitting in at their front entrance if I were to stay in this chair for 10 days, 2 weeks, whatever, and if nobody came to me and told me that there was a problem, then I could fairly conclude that nothing has come to my attention to lead me to believe that the information is incorrect. What stakeholders need is a positive affirmation. Under accountability's AA1000, you are expected to say something to the effect of, based on the activities performed over the information reviewed, we believe that the information is fair and factual. And so you must be clear as to what you're reviewing. Your assurance statement has to be comprehensive, and so that the stakeholders is exactly what you were looking at, why you looked at those things, and so what you did and what your findings, conclusions, and recommendations were. There was an ISO one that was bounced about for a while, but nobody ever used, nobody that I knew of. I want to say 27027 or something like that. I cannot remember the number, but it's like I've never come across it as actually having been used.
So just for my understanding, Michael, so a typical large organization, so assessment, what is the size of a team and how many mandates a typical assessment spreads over, and in terms of what is the effort required to carry on the assessments?
So I have like right now, I've sort of been scaling down my assurance activities and focusing more on the training. But right now I have 5 clients, and with those 5 clients, it's myself and one other person. So for my 2 UK-based oil companies, one of them is listed on the London Stock Exchange. There's myself, and there's my chemical process engineer. I use my chemical process engineer because one of the things that we assure is the carbon. And because it's a high intensity, high emitting carbon company, I use a chemical process engineer when we go to sites. So I can do carbon data myself, but stakeholders expect that you have someone, particularly for a sensitive organization such as oil and gas, that you have very specific experience on your team.
Qualified experience guy, yeah.
Yeah. And so the fact that I've been doing just the carbon emissions, I've been doing that since 2004. So I've got over 20 years of carbon work. But still, I don't believe that's enough to say that I'm qualified for that level of carbon. You need someone who understands process emissions, fugitive emissions, etc. And so when we go to an oil rig off the coast of Africa or off the coast of South America, she's very vital in looking for those sorts of things. Where is it possible that they're having emissions that they aren't able to measure, and how do they accommodate for those in their reporting? For all of my other clients, it's 2 of us. It's myself and a junior engineer. My junior engineer is there to, my junior associate. My junior associate is there to support me, to help me with doing things like data collation, the calculations, all that stuff. But it's only 2. But because of that, I focus on typically on quote unquote smaller companies. But one of those smaller companies in the UK has got operations in Brazil. So they're UK based, Brazil, Equatorial Guinea, the Congo Brazzaville. Yeah, so those currently those three companies or countries are operational with offshore platforms. And so there's thousands of employees. But because they only have the three operational sites, they don't need an assurance site visit for more than one site every year. If it was a mining company with, say, 20, 25 or 30 mines, you'd need a larger team. So because you need to have more site visits. And so you have to be able to send out, effective teams to say 10, well, I say with 30 sites, you would need to have a minimum of 8 sites per year. So you could probably get away with 6, but I wouldn't recommend it. And so you need to have 8 site visits. And because of the way the nature of the business, you have to, if you're sending 2, one of those 2 has to be highly experienced. Otherwise, you would need a minimum of 3. And so if you're doing assurance for a manufacturing environment with 1 factory, then you only need 2 people. If you're doing a manufacturing environment with 12 operational facilities, you still only need 2 people because you cycle through the sites over a period of time. So even though globally there is no standard for rotation of assurance provider, it's always best to follow the standard for auditors, which is now 10 years. I try and keep it to a maximum of 8, because of the tendency towards increased familiarity. So if it's a company with 1 site, then my typical assurance cycle is 3 years. For Metair, 8 years. And I'm on my second, or was on my second cycle.
Thanks.
Anybody else?
So you have to evaluate it over several months before you can come out with an assessment report, assurance report.
So an engagement should begin no later than 6 months before the process starts, their financial year end. Okay? You can get away with 3 months. Anything less than 3 months becomes rushed. Because, and when I say the process, that means the proposal. Because from the proposal, you have to turn it into an engagement letter. Within the engagement letter, you have to confirm the indicators that you're going to be specifically looking at for the assurance site visits. You then need the contract, which is consistent with the engagement letter. The contract holds you to testing for those indicators. If for whatever reason you decide during the site visits that you should be looking at an additional indicator, that's yours to do, and it's yours to pay for. So oftentimes I will add something if I see the necessity of it, but I won't charge them for it as long as I can fit it in. But then you've got the contract. Then you have to plan the site visit. You have to get agreement with the site or sites as to when you can actually conduct that site visit. It's highly recommended that you conduct that site visit before the financial year end. So if a financial year end is 31 December, you want to be doing that site visit no later than November. So once the Q3 data has been finalized, then you can go in and do the site visit, because anything you pick up as a problem can be fixed prior to the final data being submitted for the report. Because then the report comes out and you start assuring the data that's being reported. And you're basing your conclusions on the information that you've actually tested for at sites. And so the reporting process should take no longer than 3 months, 31 March. And you can expect that their sign-off date would be somewhere early to mid-March. So your work would end at the latest the day of the final version of the report going to print or publication.
Thanks.
Any other questions? If you've got if we still got time, please stay on if you've got the time. But please feel free to leave if you want. Just know that I'm very thankful for your involvement in this webinar. So thank you very much. Feel free to contact us, either Virendra or myself, if you have any additional questions. Just make sure that you CC both of us so that we can help keep track of all the questions. Naiman, I see you have a question.
Yeah, Naman, you can ask your question.
Yep.
Yeah. Hi. So in India, there is a specific guidelines, SSAE,
Yep.
if we compare it with ISAE.
Okay. Yeah.
Would you like to comment, like, what are the main differences between these two guidelines?
I haven't actually seen the SSAE, but if you be willing, well, actually, I'm sure Virendra can send them to me. I'd be happy to look at them and see and to comment for you in an email.
Okay, thanks. And
Perfect. Okay.
yeah, Michael, in India, there is no mandatory guidelines for assurance as per SEBI guidelines or BRSR to go for AA1000 or IASEA standard. So how do you see the future of assurance in India? How? Because right now there is no mandatory guidelines from government. They just say that the authority which is going to assurance, they should be competent and there shouldn't be any conflict of interest.
So at present, there's about 1,700 companies in the world that use accountability, even though in the world, there's not a single country that has mandatory requirements to use accountability. The accountability AA1000 standard was constructed based on stakeholder feedback of assurance and the ineffectiveness of ISAE 3000. At 1,700 companies per year, this is growing quite rapidly right now. So I've been tracking the increase, and I'm about to do a piece of research this month looking at the number of reports that are assured and the number of assurance providers, because we're seeing a significant increase in the number of licensed assurance providers, what we call CSAPs, Certified Sustainability Assurance Practitioners. We're seeing that increase because there is this what I consider reasonably a reasonable perception of a need to be certified. And so I myself have trained 107 people in the last 10 months. And last year, end of March, end of April, sorry. Last year at the end of April, there were only 239 sustainability assurance practitioners. At current count, there's roughly 750. In my next research report, I'll actually be able to give the accurate number. If you look on Accountability's website, they have a database of CSAPs, but it's inaccurate. Of course, being an assurance provider, as soon as I saw the database when it was released a couple of months ago, they redid their website, redid the database. The last time I looked at it, there was somewhere around 1,000 assurance providers, and that number isn't correct because a lot of names have been duplicated in error, particularly service assurance providers in Taiwan and China, where I believe that the person who is doing the uploading of the information didn't understand how Chinese names work. But so there's a lot. I'm like, the last time I looked, there was over 250 errors. So, and I'm expecting more errors this time. So we'll see what it is. But I'd say now with the my expectation is over 750. So it means that since April last year to June this year, so only a period of what, 17 months. Sorry, I got the hiccups. 17 months. The number of licensed and registered CSAPs has tripled. And as more people start using the AA1000 Assurance Standard, more understanding of it will be raised amongst various stakeholders, and there will be greater pressure for countries to start including it as a potential mandatory standard. So instead of saying, you know, we recommend ISAE 3000 or ISSA 5000 as the CSRD does, they'll say ISAE 3000, AA 1000 or similar. The reason the ISSA 5000 does not mention accountability is because it's written by by accounting firms. They don't want to include accountability because that's their competition.
Thank you so much, Michael. One
You're
more thing I
welcome.
would like to understand from you. So this is a certification. So what is the validity of CSAP certification if one goes for it, and how it can be continued?
Okay, so I was their first lead CSAP. So back in 2009, when the standards came out, I became their first lead CSAP, and I became their first global trainer outside of accountability itself. So the two guys who wrote the standards were official CSAPs, but they had no intention of ever practicing as a CSAP. So I've been a lead CSAP since 2009. Nobody has ever asked me for my certification, but it definitely makes a difference when I'm introducing myself to new clients. If you notice, I think Virendra, I set a CV, and I believe it has my list of assurance engagements. Does it?
Yeah, it was
Okay.
attached in the communication. Yeah.
Okay, cool. And that has the table with all of the assurance statements, right? Or the assurance engagements.
Yeah.
So when you look at that, you'll see that the table, there's a map and there's a table. I include that in all of my proposals to new clients. And between the leads CSAP status with accountability and the experience I've got, I, Michael H. Ree, managing partner, my wife's the director, managing partner of a company that currently only employs 4 people, can get engagements that were originally intended for global accounting firms. My 2 UK-based oil clients, they came to me. I didn't go searching for them. They came to me. And that's typically how I get my assurance clients. Because I'm really interested in working with companies that take their sustainability. Oh, sorry. Oh, Hardeep, sorry, can you go on? Oh, thank you, Hardeep. So yeah, I don't go fishing for them. I look for clients that really want to take their sustainability reporting serious, and part of that seriousness is effective assurance. So when they come to me, I'm more than willing to quote. Now, in Indian terms, I am not cheap. You know, my charge out rate is, well, for my minimum charge out rate is 16,000 Rand per day. And if you just let me do a quick calculation, it's 78,000 rupees a day. Now, I do manage my fees according to local pricing, but I can tell you that at 17,000 rupees a day, I'm still a hell of a lot cheaper than an accountancy firm, especially the big global five, KPMG, EY, Deloitte, so yeah, and PwC and BDO. BDO is now considered the fifth. I'm way cheaper than those. The only
Sorry,
time
I would like to interrupt. Sorry.
Yep.
Yeah. Good that you take that names EY, KPMG, and these companies. So these companies send like freshers also for assurance services. They have their partners who are certified with AA1000, but during the assurance they send the freshers. And in insurance, in their assurance statement only, they write that this has been done as per ISAE standards and AA1000 something.
because they're globally mandated to do so. In order to be an accounting firm conducting non-financial audits, you have to use the ISAE 1000 standards. You're not allowed to include an AA1000 statement. A couple of South African accounting firms got in trouble for adapting their assurance statements to be compliant with both. One of them got in trouble for including both an ISAE 3000 and an AA 1000 statement. So yes, even though they say they're licensed, whatever, they don't do it. And that's because ISAE 3000 is meant to protect the accounting firm and by extension, the accounting practice. The whole assurance statement is written to protect the assurance provider.
Okay, thanks. So, so the second part of the question, like, what is the way to continue that certification? Like, do we have to do some continuation education credits like other certification? Is there some provision like that?
So once you've done the CSAP course, you're automatically an associate level CSAP. So the fees that you pay for the course also include the fees that go to accountability to register you. So there is an annual update fee, but it's based on your experience. So you have to maintain experience, and there are CPDs or the equivalent of CPDs. If you go to a conference or you attend a short course or whatever, most short courses, as long as they're aligned to sustainability assurance or reporting, then it's fine. They have a very broad sphere of acceptance. So most courses would be accepted as reasonable CPD. They're not as strict as, like in the engineering field, you definitely have to have very specific CPD courses. But yeah, and the new standard that came out, or the new certification requirements that came out from accountability last year, were such that yes, you will need to continue to just demonstrate that you're increasing your experience, but that's it.
Okay, so just last question. Are those GE means Global Reporting Initiative courses
yes.
means suitable for this, continuing this?
Yes.
Yes. Thanks. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it was.
You're very welcome.
Means
Very welcome. No, man. I just wanted to close on one other thing. I wanted to state something else about the discussion about the Big Four. The only time I've ever lost out to a big accounting firm is, or the only reason why I continuously lose out to accounting firms is because the people who make the decision on assurance tend to be the audit committee, the risk and audit or the audit committee, because they're the ones who tend to sign off on all assurances, audits. And those are always headed by former accountancy firm partners. And so there's a bit of nepotism going on in selecting who provides the assurance. The other thing that plays against me is that my brand isn't as familiar as PwC, EY, Deloitte, and KPMG. So people look at my brand and they see this nobody. If they dig deeper, they see the experience. That's why I go ahead and provide my experience statement. And so I've, like, to all of my students who have taken the course, to all of my students who have taken the CSAP course, I offer them the potential for partnering. So I ultimately want to get to a point in my career where I no longer have any clients of my own. What I'm doing is I'm facilitating assurance engagements for my learners. So I would be like a resource to come in and lead an assurance engagement, and so that the learner can use my experience statement in their proposals. Because to try and help them develop their own experience as quickly as possible, I believe that using my experience statement is a great way to support that. And so my whole business model is changing. And I totally understand that for the next couple of years, it means that I could be like losing a lot of money, but eventually it'll come right.
Okay, so anything else, Michael, before I just share one few slides about the upcoming training program, and then we can.
Yeah, all to you. Thank you.
Thank you. So just a couple of slides here, just to show something about this standard. So this standard, when we are having this training, it includes three accountability standards. One is the stakeholder engagement standard. One is with the accountability principles, and the third one is the assurance standard. So all these three, along with the case studies, will get covered during the training program. And what Naman also asked, like, even though the SEBI has not mandated the AA1000 to be used as a sustainability assurance standard, as of now, more than 200 companies in last 4 to 5 years, they are using this standard for their ESG related disclosures, which includes the names what we have disclosed on the screen now, which includes like ABRL, Adani Power, JSW Cement, GAIL India, Mahindra Life Spaces, etc. So like as and when we are getting maturity in this particular area, the more and more people have started getting into the accredited or the standard specific assurance for their sustainability disclosures. And as Michael was sharing, there are a couple of three different areas which can be called as the sustainability practitioners. Initially, what we are currently having this training for this first part, which is associate CSAP, and this can be done with this very little experience in this, and who are willing to learn what is this all sustainability is all about, and how to implement in their organizations, as well as while performing the professional assessment or assurance of the sustainability disclosures. And as again Michael shared, like Michael himself is traveling to India for the first time to have the in-person training programs. And so these are the dates. The first batch will be in Delhi. The dates are 23, 24, and 25 July. The venue is Radisson Blu near the Delhi airport. And the second batch is in Mumbai on 29, 30, and 31st of July, which will happen at Novotel Hotel near to Mumbai International Airport. And the people who are successfully completing their training program, their name will also get listed on the accountability website as the certified CSAP practitioners. This is the something which is related to the training fees. The full course fees 1,50,000 per participant plus applicable taxes. However, as an introductory offer, we are providing a 30% discount, as well as people who are booking till 5th of July, they can avail 5% extra discount on the training fee. And if we are having 3 or more participants, then we can provide certain extra discount as well. Here is the QR code where this will take you to the registration page on our website, where all the related information about this training and the process for the participation is briefly explained. We will also share the registration information in the email for the people who have participated in this webinar. And at last, thank you all of you for taking out time and joining this particular session. And I hope that this has been definitely added value in your insights. And once again, thank you, Michael, very much. I really appreciate the commitment, like even being at this place, stuck somewhere in the Middle East and having this surgery done just a couple of days back. You still managed to do whatever it takes, and you are present here to value your commitment and also to give the most of your knowledge to the people. So thank you very much, Michael, again.
I have to admit, this is the most outrageous experience I've ever had. Never have I had to sit in a wheelchair with a urine bag strapped to the wheelchair, give a presentation. This is sustainability 101 right here.
Definitely. Sure.
Thanks again, Virendra. I really appreciate your partnership.
Yeah, sure. And so here we officially close the webinar. If somebody has any question, we are here for more 5 or 7 minutes, then they can be here and get any clarifications if they want to have. Otherwise, we are good to close this webinar. Thank you very much. Thank you all.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you,
Michael.
Thank you.